Hi everyone, it's your book coach Liisa Kovala here. Grab a cup of coffee and settle in for a discussion about all things writerly. I'm the author of Sister's Winter War and Surviving Stutthof, my father's memories behind the death cave, and I'm an author accelerator, certified fiction, and memoir book coach. As a Finnish Canadian, I also love my coffee. In this podcast, we'll take a coffee break together to chat with authors, publishers, book coaches, marketers, agents, publicists, booksellers, and many others. Welcome to Women Writing. So happy you could join us for a coffee and a chat. In today's episode of Women Writing, I have a very special guest, Holly Gutwillinger. She is a writer and my book coach and client. Holly is a heartfelt writer from a small town in Northern Ontario. In the evenings after her day job, she devotes her time to writing and attending the creative writing program at the University of Toronto's School of Continuing Studies. She is working on her debut novel, which explores a woman's complex relationship with her rescue dogs. Hi, Holly. How are you?
I'm great, Lisa. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm so happy you could join us today. I've thought for a long time that I'd like to have you on the podcast to talk about your experiences as a writer. And so we've known each other for quite a long time. I would say we probably met years ago when both of our kids were in high school.
Yes.
And I knew you as a parent, and your son was good friends and still is good friends with my daughter. And I think that was our first sort of interaction in the high school hallways of our local high
Yes,
school. Yeah. And
agreed.
I didn't know at the time that I knew your son was interested in writing. I knew he was a really great creative writer. I didn't know that what do they say? The apple doesn't fall so far from the tree. He was coming to this honestly. And you too were quietly writing in the background. What were you writing in those days? Do you
I,
remember?
I do. I wasn't exploring very much. I was a secret writer who would write, letters to friends and family, love poems to my two boys and my husband, the odd poem, but not in the story
Mm,
realm.
yeah.
I was just dabbling. I was encouraging my son, and the more I encouraged him, the more I became interested. So
Oh, I love that. I love that it was kind of, the focus was on him initially. That's really cool. Did you write as a kid?
I have thought of that so much, and I cannot remember. I
Okay.
was a creative kid.
Yeah.
I loved to just play with whatever was in the house, so, the paper towel roll,
Yeah.
and I would create things out of nothing. I do remember that vividly. I don't remember writing, but I always made cards and verses to my parents. So
Yeah. So
it
that
was
that was a
there.
way of communicating, it was a way of expressing yourself. I know
Yeah.
I remember playing with my dolls and it was always like, making up stories and storylines. And the next day I'd pick up the storyline. Like it's part of it, right? That whole play and exploration and creativity. And I love that you were making cards. Like that's so lovely, right?
That has stuck. I still
Yeah,
do that.
you still do that. It's
Yeah.
amazing. Um, but I remember, I don't know if you remember this, but I kind of remember vividly being at the local shopping mall. We have a very small shopping mall here in our hometown. And I think it was Sudbury Writers Guild. We had put out a book called Painted Voices with a collection of stories and poems and nonfiction. And I was, manning the booth and talking to the folks and telling them about the Sudbury Writers Guild and doing all the, promo things like that. And I remember that day vividly. Do you remember that at all, or is it just me?
Like it was yesterday, and I just told someone that story the other day.
Oh, no way. What do you remember about that?
Well, I had been working on something, been ruminating over a project and working on it and not knowing what the next step was. And
Mm,
there was your display, and you and another member were there. And I knew you, like, I mean, I
yeah.
didn't know you, but you were familiar to me. So it made me feel comfortable to approach. And so then I
Mhm.
started to ask you some questions about, something I was working on. And then you said, I'll never forget the line, it says, well, sounds to me like you're already a writer.
Yeah.
And that just opened a portal for me that has just been blooming ever since. And
Yeah.
so I attended, the first meeting and it just went from there. So
Yeah. Amazing. It's really interesting to me that I think people do need permission to write, which is so, in a way, crazy because I mean, pick up your pen, write. Like, we all can do that. But also, there's something really important to feel like I'm allowed. Not that you need permission from somebody else, but you need to give yourself permission. So that was like a game changer for you. You were like, oh yeah, I'm actually writing because it's not like you didn't need me to say that. It's that you needed to acknowledge that you were doing it already.
I think in you validating me, it allowed me to see myself that way. And it wasn't all at once that I saw it that way. I remained a secret writer for quite some time after that
Yeah.
because I was so unsure. And in those early days, even though I loved writing, I loved words, and I've dabbled in lots of different hobbies and whatnot, but there is a certain status attached to the word writer, I suppose, that we do tend to place,
Mm,
in society. And so I thought, well, I'm not that.
right.
But by you validating that, it allowed me to be like, well, maybe I'll just write for fun. And that's how it started. I was already
Hmm.
dabbling, but now I was going to write for fun and just write from the heart. And that's how I introduced myself at the Guild
Yes.
because everybody was telling me about all these wonderful works that they were doing. And they were like, well, how about you, Holly? And I said, well, I write from the heart.
Yeah.
And then somebody validated that. And it's not that I'm forever seeking validation, but when it comes to something so new and
Hmm.
so unknown, it's nice to just have those little nuggets of validation and
100%. Yeah,
reinforcement.
it is. And I think writing is so personal. And like you say, you write from the heart. You're writing, especially at that time, like you say, letters to your signs, like really, really personal, interior things. Those are, not necessarily things you are going to share with the world. It feels like a risk almost to tell people that, oh, I write. Like I've met so many writers who have, been writing for a long time, or even have something published who aren't quite ready to call themselves a writer. It's just such an interesting thing. And then once you've decided, oh yeah, yeah, that's what I do, that's what I am, then that just opens a little door somehow, or a window to that life, and to be able to kind of own it, I guess.
It does. And the humility is still there in that
Mhm.
sense that, well, I'm sure I write,
Yeah,
but I do feel it inside now. I
yeah,
may not outwardly express it still to some sort of degree, but I'm okay with
yeah,
that
yeah.
because now it's I've validated it
That's
inside of me.
right.
So
And I love that with that step is you just like when that sort of door opened and you walked through it, it was like you were a sponge. Like you just soak up all the things and with joy. Like that's my favorite thing is that you're a writer who um, wants to learn, wants to grow, and seeks joy in the process. Like I know it's work and I know sometimes it's up and down and all the things. We've talked about that, but that you are constantly pursuing this craft as a joyful process. And that is to me the way writers should approach it instead of like, it's so hard and it's such a slog, which it can be. Like we have to validate the fact that it's all those things, but that you're finding joy in it. So what do you think brings you joy in this process? That might be hard to answer, but
I would say it's actually not difficult for me to answer because I've spent a lot of time with myself and I've reflected a lot and I've always been difficult, hard on myself. Let's put it just
yeah.
that way. And I have been a perfectionist
Mhm.
and I still am to a certain extent. But if something didn't work out, I either quit or I moved on to something else because I needed to perfect it and I needed approval by other people, whatever that was.
Mhm.
So with writing, probably because I started at a point in my own space secretly,
Mm.
I was already doing it for fun and for the pure love of it because I wanted to bring joy to other people in through my words.
Yeah.
And so when I discovered a whole new world of story writing, I thought, wow, this is great. Like I can do this just for fun. But I also believe that age was a gift for that.
Yes.
As I get older, I am a lot more forgiving towards myself. I'm a lot more patient. So
Mm.
this came at the right time for me.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that I don't have difficult days and that I'm not criticizing or the inner
Yeah.
critic isn't coming out, but if I'm going to do that, then I might as well not be writing.
Yeah.
Because what's the joy in that? I need to find joy in the things that I do now in life. And
Totally
those
agree.
days of no more joy are gone.
Yeah, totally
Yeah.
agree. I 100% feel that way that like for me, we've talked about this before too. For me, it was my mom said when she turned 50, so she's 91 now, but when she turned 50, she had this light bulb moment and she felt like, oh, I can do whatever I want now. Like she just felt empowered. And I thought I had the same experience at 40 because I thought, oh, 50. But at 40, I felt kind of that way. But really, the game changer was turning 50. 50 was like a light bulb moment. And I totally understand what you're saying about because I'm sort of a recovering perfectionist and
Mhm.
I think writing is sort of an anti-perfectionist craft. Like you might be striving towards that, but you're always striving not like it's just never going to be perfect. So you're always learning to accept that it's better and I'm learning something and there's so many layers. So I just love the way you approach that.
Oh, I love that because I think that I've also um, included myself in circles where everyone is so supportive
Mm,
and that everyone is working towards their own goals and projects.
yeah,
I'm not in competition with anyone with
yeah.
writing. Although, sure, you may have feelings every now and again of how come my writing doesn't look like that? That's never going to change. But if you can catch yourself in those moments, then you can write with joy. And people have said over and over again, you know, or they've given you the advice, I should say.
Mm,
And it's just you have to take that advice,
mhm.
do with it what you want, and just keep going, keep writing. And
Yeah,
I am a sponge. I just want to learn it all and get
yeah.
better at it. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
And I love that idea. I find the same thing about community. Writers tend to be supportive, non-competitive, just wanting to lift each other up, celebrate each other's successes, support each other if they're having a launch or a short story was published, or like all the things. Like even you got a drop done, yay! Like it's just there's just a lot of celebration because writers get how hard the journey is, so we celebrate each other's milestones. And I you rarely see that competitive spirit in the writing community. And so I think that's just such a brilliant thing for folks because then they um feel like, there's it's not like you have to reach this, I don't know, like 10,000 followers on Instagram or something and then okay, well you've made it. Like it's not about that. Like it's just about the small little accomplishments and they look different for all of us and it might be a couple pages written or this week or it might look like a published poem or whatever it's going to be. So it's just to me the community is so important.
And that's probably been another factor is that I've never been involved in something where everyone is so supportive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm not working against anyone else. If anything, I'm working against myself, but I'm cutting myself a lot of
Yeah,
breaks at this point in my life. So,
absolutely. I love that so much.
yeah.
So after that, you actually joined, I think one of the early things you did was join the Sudbury Writers Guild, which was sort of a step for you. And I think for a lot of folks, I remember joining, I think it was in 2012. And I know a lot of members who started out thought, I don't know if I should be here because I haven't written long enough or I don't have anything published. Like they just feel like they needed to be at a different stage to be able to join a guild, which is completely false. As you know, it's really about supporting writers at every stage. And now you are the vice president of the Sudbury Writers Guild. So, so that's you've come a long way with supporting the community here in Sudbury. So what made you make that little leap up from okay, I'm going to actually jump in there and see what this is about?
Well, I remember those first few meetings and thinking the same thing, like, I don't think I belong here. And you're sitting in the back, and please, no one look at me. And then remember,
Like high
the
school.
question. Yeah, like high school, like, what are your roses and your thorns? And I don't have either. But and I actually had the thoughts of not returning because I thought
Yeah.
this isn't a place for me. I don't belong. And but
Mhm.
again, the guild members are so wonderful and the writers are super supportive. So how could I not go back? So I kept
Mhm.
pushing myself. And that's when in 2024, I decided to do like that full commitment, a personal commitment of 365 days of writing.
Yeah.
And that meant everything. It
Yeah.
meant jumping in. And I do tend to do that with my projects, but this was different. There was something telling me to stick with it every single time. And there was
Yeah.
never really moments of faltering to the point where I wanted to abandon it.
Yeah.
So I just kept taking on responsibilities or new classes,
Hmm.
workshops, whatever. And so when the opportunity came up for vice president, I was sitting there with the president, now president, and we were like, should we do it? And I thought, well, if you want to do it, I will support you. And that's kind of how that came about with another member strongly encouraging us, if you remember
This is
that.
how these things happen, really, is
Yes.
somebody's like, you'd be great at this, and kind of pushing along. But it's great because we have new people in those roles, and it just brings fresh energy and new ideas. And I love that. And I was president for 2 years, and it was really fun. And we did what did a bunch of things that we wanted to do. But then then you kind of give it over to somebody else, and then it's like kind of a relief to let them take it over, and also then you get to benefit from these fresh ideas. So I love that there's a little change in hands every few years as people go on to other things, or just want to step back from the responsibilities and whatever. But it's been really
Yeah.
fun that you two doing well, the whole team. There's a whole team
Oh,
behind
yeah. We've got
with
a
the social
great
media,
team.
and yeah, great team all the way
Great team.
around.
And
Yeah.
being part of an executive is a whole other experience, right?
Yes.
The behind the scenes
Yes.
and how do you bring your knowledge and your experiences to the work to the writing community in the
Yeah.
guild. So it's
Yeah.
been a wonderful opportunity and my team, not my team, but the team
But yeah.
executive has
Yeah.
been wonderful to work
Yeah,
with.
they've been wonderful. And I think it's nice for folks to get involved because like you say, they see the behind the scenes and how much work actually goes into everything from getting guest speakers to hosting meetings and organizing newsletters. And there's so much work involved behind the scenes that if you're just a member or somebody on the outside, you don't really notice that that's happening. It's just sort of an expectation that it will. And so you start to realize how much is involved. And so getting to a place where you can donate some of your time to that, it benefits so many people. And I think that that's really important. And that's how we keep these communities going. Because if somebody doesn't step up and do this stuff, there's nothing for us, the rest of us to enjoy, right? So I
Absolutely.
I
And
think you
being
guys are
part of
amazing.
that guild and the executive has definitely sparked other thoughts for me, other
Yes.
ideas, right? That
Yeah.
one day I hope to pursue in.
Awesome. Yeah. That's what happens. Yeah, there's a little ripple effect, right? So the other thing that I love that you started doing was well, first I think first, I'm trying to think of the timeline here, but you I started book coaching a couple years ago, and I offered a very first little class of 6 writers because I hadn't done it before. So I'm like, let's try this. Meanwhile, I'd been a high school teacher for decades, but anyways, it was just kind of a new thing for me. And you were one of the first people to sign on and say, I'm going to try this. I'm going to like bring it on. And that was what made you decide to take that little leap.
Well, it started with the poem writing. And if I take a step back and just, I can tell you my first experience. It was when I run, that's where my ideas happen. They swirl around in my head and then they sort of download and I stop running for a bit so I can take notes on my phone. Anyways, it started with a project of these poems that were downloading. And then I thought I'd like to create something for my boys when I turn 50 to give them as a project. So that was the project. And that's when I met you at the local mall. Then I have 2 rescue dogs.
That's right.
And it's been a struggle at moments just trying to give them the best care for their needs based on their needs. And one of them is high needs. He has a lot of anxiety and separation anxiety, that sort of thing. So one day I was sitting there and all of a sudden a poem started to download in my head, like, but I put it in his voice. It's
Mm.
not because my dog was talking to me, just to be clear. Um, but I think I was trying to rationalize some of his behaviors and I would put them into verses. And then it would sort of make me feel better. And so then that morphed into, I wonder what it would be like to tell Sully's story.
Mm.
And that just snowballed from there. And
Yeah.
so then when I started to write down ideas and it was flowing out of me. And so were these poems in Sully's voice.
Yeah.
And then you announced that you were having a group coaching, and I thought, oh, so
It
all
all
of
just
these
all came together
pieces
at one
just
time.
absolutely. And so I started with your first group, and it was incredible. And you were teaching us all of the blueprint methods and how to write this story, how to craft it, how to construct it. And something was coming together for me.
Yeah.
And I never even thought I would be where I am today when I first took
Yeah.
your first group coaching
Yeah,
session.
it's been so fun to watch how you've gone from, writing kind of quietly behind the scenes and to moving this project forward and forward. And I always loved when you describe how the story would just download. I think that's such a great way of thinking of it. Like, and I think folks can understand, like, there's sometimes when you just labor over the ideas and and sometimes it just floods in and you're like, where does this come from? Like, it's like a gift. And I love that idea that you describe it that way and it was coming to you and you just needed to write it down. Yeah, you can't ignore that voice.
You can't ignore it, and that's how it's continued.
Yeah.
I mean, there are times when I try to, write ideas, but every now and again, and it always seems to couple up with running or walking in
Yes.
the woods,
Yes.
that it just comes to me,
Yeah.
and it's
I'm
pretty.
I'm not a runner, but I love to walk and I really am an advocate for that, like especially when you're stalled out or when you've just not feeling the flow of it, just walking and or if you have to like think about a story idea or a problem you're having, just walking it out. Like
Mhm.
inevitably I come home with like, I know what to do. Like I think I probably did know what to do, but I needed that clear head, fresh air, just like your body is doing something completely else. There's no anxiety around that, and then it just becomes clear in a way that
Maybe
when
the
you're sitting at
movement.
your desk, sort of feels like you're like pushing it a little, or you're I don't know what really this you're sort of like more in your head about it. Whereas when you're walking, your body kind of takes on that. Okay, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like
And the
we're good.
movement dislodges something.
Yeah, I think
I
it
don't know. That's
does.
what it feels like because you're allowing yourself to just move and to
Yeah.
let everything flow through.
Yeah, yeah, I think that there's something to that. I highly recommend
Yep.
running or walking or any kind of physical activity.
Any
And I think
movement.
even just anything in nature where you can just be kind of focusing your body on something else. And then all of the those ideas can really clarify. But I just love the whole concept of the download. Like it just
It's
it's
the only way I can describe it. It's
like
just I would be running and all of a sudden a line would come through and I would
yeah,
stop because I couldn't run on a treadmill and ride at the same time. So I'd
yeah,
stop and then that just continued to happen over and over.
yeah,
So anytime I wanted an idea, I'd go out for a run slash walk.
yeah, yeah.
I end up walking
Amazing.
most of the time because I have to write.
Yeah. And
So,
that's another good tip is to have your phone or notes on your phone or a little notebook or a recorder or something because those ideas come at the most inopportune times. Like, and you want, if you don't, like, at least for me, if I don't write it down, like I had a good idea last night and I thought, oh, I must write this down. And I didn't. And then 20 minutes later, I'm like, what was that idea again? I just can't remember. And I'm really hoping you'll come back to me because in the moment was brilliant, wasn't it? It was brilliant.
absolutely.
It's
Those
gone.
4 a.m.
Yeah.
one-liners,
Yeah.
definitely.
You need you need to write it down. So that's
I have sent
amazing.
myself so many text messages, I can't keep up.
Yeah, I know, right? Yes, 100%. It's such amazing thing if you can capture it in that moment. I don't know if you've read Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic, and she describes how ideas are just moving through the air and it's like writers are just grabbing them. And if you don't grab it, it's going to keep going and it's going to go to some other writer, which which happens. And then they're writing about the thing that you had thought of, but it's because you didn't take it in that moment. So there's some kind of like little bit of magic there when those ideas are coming to you. You got to grasp them. I
One
don't
of my
know.
favorite books. I've listened to it, I've read it twice, I've recommended it about 100 times,
Yeah.
definitely.
Amazing. Yeah. I think I need another reread of that. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Things resonate. I keep, some of those things keep coming back. I'll have to go back to it too. Um, And the other thing I thought that was so wonderful that you decided to do is you enrolled in the University of Toronto's creative writing program. And like that's another big step. So if I think about like, I don't know, maybe it was a year and a half ago when you took that first class with me. And that was so one of your first bigger ventures into writing. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to go take some, I think you might have taken, did you take some other class first? I can't remember. I think you might have taken another writing class
Yes,
at
I
the
think it
college
was
or something.
yes, Ontario
Uh,
Learned through Sir Sanford Fleming. I think I took a creative
yes.
writing.
So
Yeah.
great. And then the U of T. And so what courses have you taken there so far?
I've taken all but the last mandatory class and the final project, which is a mentorship for
Yes.
your first 20, 10,000 words. I
Yeah.
don't quote me on that, but yeah,
Yeah.
I have to look into
Yeah.
that.
So you're nearly done
I
and
am.
in a short amount of time because I think do you get 4 years to do a program like that? I feel like you get
Not
4 or 5 years
sure.
and you've just gone like, I'm doing it. This is what
I
I
started
mean. You have
last
this
year. That was
sponge.
that 365 days.
Yeah.
I just went for it. I've
Yeah.
got the energy right now, so
Yep. Just do it.
let's do
Amazing.
it. Yes, and it
And
has been wonderful.
yeah. And was there any particular courses? I did that program as well several years ago, and I just loved it. Lots of amazing writers from across the country, across Canada, who are the teachers, sometimes in person, a lot of them online because we're up in the north, out of maybe 3 or 4 hours out of Toronto, and so we tend to do the online things. Although I did a couple in person in Toronto in the summer. I don't know if you've tried that yet,
Mhm.
but those are fun. Any particular courses that stood out for you as being like, oh, this really resonated for me. This is something I really needed?
Gosh, you're right in saying there are so many great offerings and professors. The two that stood out the most for me would have been Introduction to Writing a Novel.
Mm,
Incredible
yeah,
class. The professor was so engaged with her students, and we were online, and it was just incredible where you looked forward to it every week to just hear what everyone else was doing and just keep writing. Like the assignments were fun.
yeah,
It was just fun. It was just
yeah.
a great class. And the second one I'd have to say was in, I'm not sure if it was Introduction to Romantic Comedy or
Oh,
something
fine.
like that nature,
Yeah,
but that was a lot of fun.
yeah. Did it make
Writing.
you feel like there was a particular genre you prefer over another, like as a writer?
Well, interestingly enough, I've started to write my own rom-com,
Yay. So
because that
fun.
class was just fun, and it's something that's just flowing out of
Mhm.
me on the
Yeah.
side when I'm not working on Sully's project. But
Yeah.
uh,
So you really, in essence, have two novels on the go. One that you started a while back, one that you're, the romance that you're working on, and then the Sully story.
yes.
We had a conversation a little while back about how um, you were finding the second novel, which is you're still in both of them, but the second one is sort of had started a little later, that one is happening more easily than the first one, and how the first one is because it's such a learning curve. So can you describe that?
Hmm. I will try. I think you're right in saying that the first one, because it's based on my two dogs, and I've fictionalized it, it makes it a little bit more challenging.
Yeah.
And coupled up with learning the craft of writing, the process of telling a story, it's been a learning curve. A great one, but it has been a learning curve. And
Yeah.
so learning all the things,
Yeah.
as you
For
say.
sure.
So, and again, trying to balance the main character not being me,
Mm-hmm.
but it is they are my dogs. And
Yeah.
so it is a completely different fictionalized character with
Yeah.
my two rescue dogs. So
Yeah.
kind of interesting. And also with the POV of being one of the POVs is my dog.
Yeah.
So
Which I
that's
love.
been, yeah, absolutely
Amazing.
fun.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think what's happening with the romantic comedy is that it's like a movie that's playing in my head.
Yeah.
And although it's not downloading every single day, I write and I just have fun.
Yeah.
But I also know all of the things to write the novel. Not all of them, but
Right.
know the basics, the
Yeah.
description, dialogue, exposition. And
Yeah.
so I can incorporate that, but I can truly just write
Yeah.
probably from my heart. If
Yeah.
I think I might be having a little bit of an aha moment here. This is where I love to write lovely, sappy, sentimental pieces, and I'm able to pour that out into this romantic comedy.
Yeah. I feel like this genre suits you as a person so well, just your approach to life. If anyone follows Holly on Instagram, she's got lovely, she finds hearts in you wouldn't even believe. She takes the pictures, and I'm always like shocked. I shouldn't be shocked because your eye finds them. You're when they're in anything, in the concrete, in the leaves, in wherever you're gonna see it and it resonates with you and you take a picture and it's just amazing. So follow Holly on Instagram because the hearts are everywhere and it just reflects who you are, right? Like you're heart centered. Um the we had conversations early on about the Sully story because like you say they're your rescue dogs and to some extent you were telling your story, but we had the discussion about whose story is it and how much do you want it to be a memoir or do you want it to be fiction? And we talked about how if it was memoir, like you'd be sharing a lot about your life and whatever was happening in it. And if it was fictionalized, you would have a lot of freedom to make your characters go through whatever you wanted them to go through. And so that was a discussion we had early on. And you opted to just go with fiction. Why did you go fiction instead of nonfiction?
Well, the first reason is probably because my life isn't that interesting. But I think that I did start with it being me. It was
Right.
my point of view and then Sully's point of view. And you're right. Like, I mean, I wasn't able to pour my life onto the paper. And so I thought, if I did fictionalize this woman, I could really give her an interesting story. But mainly it's because I wanted to focus on the dogs.
Yeah.
I didn't,
Yeah.
I mean, yes, the main character, we need to focus on her as well, but I
Mm.
really wanted Sully's story to shine through as well and for
Yeah.
him to be in the spotlight.
Yeah.
And so, and there
For
were
sure.
pieces in there that weren't part of my life, like the
Yeah.
rescue aspect of it.
Yes.
I,
Well, and I
it,
think that's opened up a lot of opportunities because now that your main character is no longer you, she's a whole person on her own right, and you can do what you will. And yet you're drawing on your own experiences because you know what it was like to have well you know what it's like to have a Cash and Sully and you know what that is the emotional aspects of it are but Renly your main character is going through her own things
yeah,
that are not apart from you. So I love that because yeah, there's always some part of ourselves in our books. But it doesn't have to be about us. It can be,
right.
these invented characters, but you have those experiences to draw on to make it authentic.
I do. And I think that I have the age and maybe not all the wisdom, but I have the wisdom of a 50-year-old to be able to counsel Renly in
Yes,
some of these
exactly.
circumstances, maybe. And that's
Yeah.
where I'm able to put some of myself in that
Yeah. And I
story.
do love the decision. And I think this was a decision you had made really early on, even maybe even in the first book coaching class we did together, which was having the one POV, like a first, I think Sully's first person point of
Yeah.
view
Mhm.
and Renly is third. Am I right?
Yes, that's
Yes,
correct.
I'm
Yeah.
getting this right. I don't want to flip it around. Um, and so it's so distinctive. Like it's still Renly's point of view, but it's third person close. Whereas Sully, it's first person, and this little Sully has just got this personality, and I love it. Like it's just such a great. storytelling technique. What made you decide to go that route? Because I know you thought about all the different options and how could I tell the story. And I just remember you sort of, it came down to almost feeling like how you felt when you were writing.
Definitely. And I wrote both POVs in the opposite. So I've done Renly in first and in third. I've done Sully in first and in third. And I went with my gut and I went with what felt right.
Yeah.
And I've spent a lot of time in the backyard watching Sully and listening to him in a sense, right? Reading his body language and just trying to absorb what he was trying to portray.
Yeah.
And I think that in writing first person with Sully, I was able to capture more of what I think he's feeling. I
Yeah.
mean, that's all
Yeah.
very there, but
For sure.
that's why I went with first person because then the reader would be able to understand Sully a little bit more.
Yeah. For sure.
Whereas Renly with the third, I'm able to kind of be an overseer.
Mm.
And
Mm.
it's again, it brings more attention to Sully because I
Yeah.
feel like it's more personal with him.
Yeah.
And I really want the rescue aspect to shine.
Hmm.
So
Absolutely. And I
yeah.
love that they're like parallel stories that join together and the two characters have some some really unique similarities that it comes together. I don't want to give it away because someday people will be buying this and reading about it. So I just love what you've done there. Um, so you've actually like been one of my biggest supporters, I have to tell you, because I'm pretty sure almost everything I've offered, you're like, oh, I'll do that. Oh, let me come to that. Oh, you're doing a retreat. Yeah, here I'm coming to that. So it's been so lovely because
Yeah.
we've gotten to know each other really well. And then you took another big leap of faith, which was deciding to work one-on-one after having done some, groups with me and having done your UT classes and various things. And then you said, okay, I am ready to invest in this particular story. And so for folks that don't know what that involves is Holly submits 20 pages every 2 weeks and I give her feedback and I write a little editorial letter. And then we have a Zoom call and we have a conversation about that. And we talk about what's happening and what needs to happen and where the story is going. And so it's a real sort of hashing out of ideas and thinking about craft. And it's for me, it's delightful. How is it for you, Holly?
It's incredible. I mean, I can't wait for that call every 2 weeks and your editorial letter. It opens things up even further. And I mean, I know there's always room for growth. There will always be.
Yeah.
But if I look back, and I think that we had this conversation the last time, I looked back at my chapter one from a first draft
Mm-hmm.
and I barely even recognized it because
Interesting.
of how we've worked together and how you've taught me so much along the way coupled up with all of the other things that I've been doing.
Yeah.
I've been able to notice the difference in my own writing
It's
and
amazing.
how I'm able to tell a story now.
Yeah.
I may not always be able to verbally explain, but
Right.
I know that about myself. I'm
Yeah.
better with the written word.
Yeah. It's interesting.
And
And it's
yeah,
been so fun because I think that ultimately is like a book coach's dream is that the writer doesn't need them anymore, right? Like it's and I mean of course every new project is a new project and there's always something to learn and like I too have a book coach for the book I'm working on. So but it's that idea that that the person you're working with is starting to see what's happening in their own work and what needs to happen, and that it's like you're saying the second book is coming that much more easily because you feel okay, I know what I did there, but I want to do this now, or you just start making different decisions. So I just think it's been so fun to see you go from somebody who's been writing quietly in the background who is now, really invested in craft and in story and pushing the envelope and not seeing restrictions. Like, you can keep learning and keep going for as long as you want because you're just so open to it. Whereas I think most writers are like that, but occasionally there's a writer who is, oh well, it's good, it's done. I don't need any help. Okay, if you don't need help, you don't need help, right? But also, if you're open, then I think that's when we do so much learning, and I see that with your work for sure. And even just this round of working with you on this manuscript has been incredible to watch and so fun for me. Like the story is so fun.
Well, and I've had so much fun and seeing the story through your eyes, even when we talk it out and you
Yeah.
may have a suggestion and then it shines a light on a whole new idea for
Yeah.
me. So
Yeah.
having that, just having someone to talk to about it
Yeah.
is incredible. Because you can talk to your family, but they
Yeah.
don't really fully understand and they think oh, that's cool, mom.
Yes.
But like it's
Yeah.
it's just not the same as talking to other writers.
Yeah. I
And
think
just
that's important. I feel like if it's not a book coach, if you have a friend who's a writer or you have a little critique group or an online class group of people, like anywhere you can find people who are doing the same work as you, it just helps you see your own work differently and it helps you like bounce ideas off. Like I often talk about the fact that I talk about my story with my husband on a walk all the time and he nods his head and says, uh-huh, uh-huh. But honestly, I don't even think he's hearing a word. And that's okay. I just need to talk it out and he can't help me anyway. But like if I'm talking to you about story, then it's like this back and forth and a real understanding of each other's whether something's going well or not going well, or why we have these dips in energy and why there's this kind of moments of activity and excitement about things and how natural all of those feelings are. My husband just doesn't get it. He's a nice guy,
neither
but
does mine. But
but
I
I
think
think
it's
other
because
writers know that.
you are also so invested in this story as much as I am. And so having that dedicated time
Yeah,
just for this story,
yeah, so
we get that
fun.
5 minute chitter chat over with, and then we
Yeah,
get right into
get
business and we
into it.
and then I'm off on my own and I'm continuing the work.
Yeah.
So for me, that is absolutely incredible.
I know. I love this process. I love the fact that like even with my book coach, um, it's like I just feel like there's one other person in the world who knows the story as well as I do. And that's really nice to have somebody at this stage because later, like when you, let's say if you self-publish and you do that, or if you get a publisher and an editor, then there's a bigger group of people. But in the developmental stages, when you can be really alone, like it can be a very lonely process to know somebody else in the world cares about the story as much as you do and cares about these characters and wants it to be the best story it can be. And I think it's like from a book coach point of view, I love it. And from a book
Mhm.
coaching client point of view, I love it. Like the whole process is magic to me. So I'm glad that you feel like it's working for you.
It totally is. And that being said, sometimes I can get too close to the story.
Yes, yeah,
And I have you to bounce the ideas off of, and you're like, well, have you considered this?
yeah,
Because I'm so close, I would have never even
yes.
contemplated it. And
Well,
we
I
all
think
know
that's
Holly had
true.
difficulty with conflict, creating conflict in my stories because I want everything to be perfect and
I
happy and
know we want to be
sunshine. So,
happy. But
yeah.
you know, Holly, that piece of advice, like that letting our characters struggle and suffer is exactly the advice I received from my mentors because I did the exact same thing. And I think writers do. We protect our characters because we've created them and there's a little bit of us in them and we don't want them like we want them to have a hard time but not too hard.
That's
But the
right.
reader is like what's they want to see it go wrong so that we can see it go the other way. And so it's hard for us writers because I think we do protect our characters, and especially like little Sully, who wants to see little Sully go through something not so good? But you
And
know,
I cried a few times in some of the
yeah,
parts in that book,
yeah.
but
Well,
it's
you
not,
know that it's emotional when you
yes,
read your own words and you feel like that emotional response to it. Like you know the reader is going to feel it too. And it is lovely and it is a beautiful story and it is hopeful and all of the things.
it is.
But also there are some challenges for your characters and as there should be. So it's been
That's
fun to
right.
see that
Had to learn
that
that.
develop. Yeah. Well, I mean, we all do. And I have to remind myself of that too. Like, okay, I would like her to pull her out of this scene, but actually she just needs to step up now. Or not let somebody save her. She's got to have agency, right? All those little tricks that we have to think about as writers. Um, so if you were to think about, I mean, I think every kind of learning we do is so important as a writer, whether it's reading or craft books or listening to podcasts or reading articles on Substack or whatever we're doing. Like it's classes. It's all so important. What would you say if you were talking to a new writer and they were somebody like you who maybe was writing quietly in the background,
Mhm.
and they wanted to take that next step? What would you say would be a nice starting out place for them to sort of move forward?
That is a
So many
great
options, I
question. There are
know.
so many options.
Yeah,
And there are so many offerings that sometimes that's even overwhelming because you don't know which direction to take.
yeah.
I would have to say, because I do have a friend who is dabbling right now, kind
Okay.
of similar to what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I have just been trying to help her,
Mm.
and she'll ask the questions like, what should I do next? So I'll say, well, how about you just try free writing? Or so I'm trying not to overwhelm her because she
Yes.
hasn't, jumped in to a class right away. And
Mhm.
so, and not everybody wants to do that. Not everybody wants to just jump in full
That's
on. So
right.
I've just been trying to encourage her. I think in the beginning, if you had someone you could go to for that assistance or that
Mhm.
mentorship
Yeah.
to just get you going and get your feet wet and build your confidence.
Yeah.
That's what I would
I love that.
recommend, which is
And
something I would love to do in the future is
yeah,
just create some sort of mentorship
love
program
that. I
for
love
new.
that. I think that's amazing advice because it can remind other writers who may be a little bit farther down the track that to keep an eye on for those people because you can just give that little hand to them to support them in that beginning stages. Because I think you're right. It's a lot about confidence. It's a lot about feeling like what's the next step and and you're right. If you jump into something too intimidating at the very beginning, you might just be turned off from it. But to keep finding that joy in it, I love that a lot.
Yes, because I mean, if if you find yourself in a group where you don't belong, you may just retreat. And
Yes.
perhaps you've been a writer who's been writing at home for years, but just didn't know what that next step
Yeah.
was. So
Yeah.
sometimes just that helping hand. And
Yeah.
like you say, you make a good point. Seasoned writers may recognize that in
Hmm.
someone who's new.
Yeah.
And wouldn't it be nice if somebody reached out and said, "Hey, if you need,
Yeah.
advice or help or I can't. I won't be able to teach someone how to write, but I can certainly guide
Yeah.
them and show them
Absolutely.
someone who can
Support
teach them.
them, well,
To
of
a
course,
great
it's
book
just
coach.
amazing. Well,
Yeah.
and, I just feel like if all of us have it's like a, I don't know, some people don't like the word journey, but I just feel like it is. You get on the road at some point and the road never ends and we're all on it. So we've passed all the same things eventually. And we can reach back and help the people coming behind us if it's a little bit tough. And we can look ahead to what other people are doing and go, okay, that's interesting. I like what's happening over there. And we can motivate each other. And I just love that idea because it's to me, it's kind of all about community and the fact that we writing doesn't have to be solitary. We don't have to do this alone. Like I know we spend a lot of time alone with our blank
Yeah.
pages. We do, but it doesn't all have to be alone and we can really support each other.
And writing can be whatever you want it to be. It doesn't mean that it has to be in the form of a book that you have to have published.
That's
Maybe it's just
right.
writing for fun, writing to
Yeah.
release emotions,
Yeah,
whatever your
absolutely.
reason is.
Yeah, there's
Just
a long tradition of journals and diaries that people have written. And, I love the idea of you create cards that are gifts, like all of those things. It's just that tapping into your creative self, and it can look like whatever it is. And if somebody's goal is to be traditionally published or to self-publish or sell so many copies, you can have any goals you want, but it's that process, the creativity, the learning. I think that's the most important part. And I always think of you when I think about the joy of writing because you just exude that in a way that is always positive. And I wish that for everybody. Like find the joy in your writing practice. And like it's not easy every day.
No,
but
and I
it's
don't
still
want
gonna be
people to
joyful.
think that I'm always happy when I'm writing. I do struggle through
Yes.
many parts of it, but
Yeah.
I just have to come back to how
Yeah.
this makes me feel. And if it doesn't
Yeah.
make me feel happy, I'm not going to continue.
Yeah,
But it makes me
exactly.
feel pretty darn happy right now.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And I think that's the kind of books you write are the ones that will people will read because they will fall in love with those characters and will find joy in those words and in those stories. Like they're just lovely. They're filled with light in the way that you are. And I think like it does, like I would not expect, I don't know,
A thriller.
some kind of, yeah, I probably don't expect a ghost story from you or some kind of a, dark thing. I mean, maybe down the road you'll be like, oh, I want to try my hand at that. Go for
Maybe.
it, of course. But like, at the moment, I think we all need the light right now in
Absolutely.
this
And the
world we're living
dogs.
in. And the
My stories
dogs.
will always have dogs. So unless it's a
Oh,
dog ghost story,
yeah. It could
probably
be. It
unlikely.
could be. Oh, there's a
Maybe
whole other story now we've got
I,
happening.
I have to go
If
right
if you don't do that, somebody else is going to grab that idea. Wait a
pluck
minute, a
it from the
dog that's a
ether.
ghost. Love it. So good. Um, so was there anything else that you wanted to chat about before we say goodbye for the moment? I know you are um busy working. You've got kids who are grown-ups and out of the house. We're both at that stage in our lives where we have a little bit more time for ourselves, I guess you could say. Both love our dogs and want to spend time with them and find joy in them. What's next on the agenda? Do you have some big goals for yourself moving forward?
Well, this year's goals are definitely working through a Sully story, getting through to the next revision process. I'm on draft 2 now, and working through the romantic comedy just as I can fit it in. I mean, I do work full time, so writing, comes in at 5 a.m. when I can because I go to bed so early. So I think those are my goals, perhaps having the first draft of the second story, but
Mhm.
it all has to be done without pressure. I
Yeah,
mean, yes, I put pressure on myself, but like I said before, if there's no joy in it, then I'm not sure what my purpose is in
yeah,
it. So
for
I feel like
sure.
everything is happening at the right time for me. Like you
Yeah.
said, my boys are adults and they're gone and doing their own thing. So this is my time now to enjoy this. And
Yeah.
whatever it means for me down the line, this book has changed from a small goal of just writing a poem to a full story to never publishing to publishing.
Maybe.
Yeah, and I have plans for this book with local rescue shelters. So we'll see where that takes me. And
Yeah.
right now I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the people I'm meeting. And I mean, you have been such a mentor for me, and I can't even tell you what that has meant to me. And you've taught me so much. And if I could tell anyone, it's just, yeah, Liisa is incredible. She's an incredible
Oh,
person and a
that's
book
so
coach
sweet.
and an
I
author.
didn't pay her to say that.
Not at all, not at all.
That's so sweet, Holly. No, honestly, you're a delightful person to work with. On it's
Thank you.
just been my pleasure working with you all these years on your different projects and seeing you just blossom as a writer. It's just amazing, and I'm sure we're going to see lots more from you coming forward. And I want to remind people that they should also go to Substack and subscribe to Ramblings from the Little Shed. You have a lovely, delightful little Substack going, and I always love to read it.
From my
Yes,
shed
you're
here.
there. You're right there. It is delightful little shed. Awesome. And sometimes we get to see pictures of your dogs, and you have a lovely cat too. What's your cat's name?
Willow.
Willow, I knew that. Yes, and Willow too. So yes, please go check out Holly on Substack as well, and follow her on Instagram. And thank you so much for this conversation. So delightful, and I just really appreciate you talking about your process and sort of this how you came to this point, because I think a lot of writers are thinking about it and aren't sure about what to do next. And I think you've given a lot of insight into what that could look like for people.
And it's been nice to reminisce because I don't talk about it very often. And I think about it, but it's nice to revisit that
Yeah.
with someone who knows my story, but also now to share it because that hasn't been easy as well, right? Like
Yeah.
to share something publicly,
Yes.
you're never sure how that's going to land. Not that it should matter, but
Right. No, but
then
it's
there's
true.
that sort of that self-confidence. And
Yes.
so this has been wonderful to be able to share it.
Yeah.
And if I can inspire one person who's been writing secretly
Yeah.
from the heart and thinks it's not good enough, then please let this be the time that you reach out and
Yeah.
keep writing.
It goes back to the, oh, you're already a writer, right?
Oh gosh, I'll never
It,
forget that one.
but it's your permission to them, right? I think
Yeah.
people need to hear it. So I love those full circle moments that
Yeah.
we're here for folks, and I love that. Thanks, Holly.
Thank you. This has been incredible. Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks. Do you have writing goals that you want to achieve in 2025? If you need support, encouragement, accountability, and community, join the Women Writing Circle. We meet bi weekly to set writing goals and get pages done. Go to Women Writing on Substack and subscribe. Let's create a little magic this year. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule to have a coffee break with us at Women Writing. Don't forget to subscribe to Women Writing on Substack. If you like this episode, share it with someone who needs a writing break and a little inspiration. Happy writing! Thank you to Michael Jensen for his original music and editing, and to Mia Jensen for the logo design.